All right, we are recording. So in today's video, we have Anicia. And so we're going to be talking about stress, academic stress, and how it can affect students and their mental health, especially high schoolers. So Anissa, you can take it away, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Anissa. I am currently a product marketing manager at Facebook, but I did my undergrad at USC and I actually transferred to USC from Smith College. So I got to go through the college application process twice, which was fun, but also very stressful. And I'm originally from Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I'm from a super small town, didn't have access to a lot of resources. So I've had to figure a lot of things out on my own.
Great. Okay, so yeah, start asking you a couple of questions. Most of them, again, are going to have to do with academic stress, academic validation. I'm a junior currently, and I know a lot of juniors and seniors, and it can get very stressful these next 2 years because of the whole college admissions process or standardized testing. So I kind of wanted to know some tips that you can give students to how to handle stress or stress in USC, maybe if you remember, because it is a challenging school. So I'm sure you went through the same thing. So
Yeah, totally. I would say my number one piece of advice is just to constantly try to do something you enjoy every day. I think that got me through USC and it definitely got me through applying to college twice. So for me, like working out was one of the things that I enjoy and I tried to make a priority even when things felt super overwhelming. And that just helped me feel like every day I was doing something for myself. Um, I would say another piece of advice is just try to keep in perspective like this is a moment in time. To be honest, applying to college is really just like a shot in the dark. Like you apply to a bunch of places, it's a matter of luck and what you in terms of what you get into. So like, and once you get in somewhere, it's kind of gonna just work itself out. So just try to keep that perspective. Like, yeah, it feels like a really big deal right now. It's top of mind for everyone. Everybody is panicking about it, but it's going to work out and you're going to get in where you're meant to be and you're going to figure out your path. And just remember, no one knows what they're doing. So even people that pretend to have everything together, they really don't. Um, yeah, that was my biggest lesson. I remember when I entered college, I always thought like, all these kids have it together. They know what they want to do. And I just got in and now I don't know what I want to do. And at the end of the day, you're going to figure it out. That's what life is. It's about figuring it out.
sure. So let's talk a little bit about how stress can take a toll on one's mental health and how to kind of cope with that, and just maybe talk about how important it is to keep your mental health in mind, because I feel like mental health for young, especially teenagers, often gets overlooked. A lot of the times people are like, you have nothing to be stressed about, you just have school, or it's not just like stress that comes from work, it's a lot of other things. So
Yeah, totally. I think stress is definitely something that is really, I think everybody experiences it and it's hard to kind of manage. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. So I think a lot of times we go through life and people don't like to talk about when they're in therapy. But personally, I started doing therapy in high school and it was really helpful for me just to like get tools and tips on how to like cope with my overthinking or my anxieties around like what university I was going to get into. So that is like my number one tip, like in terms of just how to manage stress. Like if you need support and like you feel like your mental health is suffering, definitely always reach out. Like there's no shame in going to counseling and getting a professional opinion. Um, I also think too, like mental health is something that we talk a lot about as a society. Um, and I don't think it's always something that we really like take seriously, right? Like we can talk about it, but I think
yeah,
you kind of have to make sure that every day you're putting your mental health first. So if that's like canceling plans with your friends because you feel too overwhelmed or you're tired, or telling your parents like, hey, every time you ask me about college applications, it gives me anxiety, like whatever boundaries you need to set, like definitely work on setting them so that way like you're protecting your peace, as I like to call it.
and as for academic validation, now like a lot of people, especially me sometimes. I'm not one to talk, but sometimes, students let their grades kind of define them, or their accomplishments define them, their SAT scores define them. I know now, like, now that we started taking our standardized tests, I sometimes look at other people and I'm like, wow, like, they, like how you said, they're so much more advanced, they're so much more prepared. And it's just important to not let your accomplishments define you.
100%. And that's going to carry throughout your life, because I think I think a lot of us always put like work or school as like, this is who I am. Like, school defines me, or my grades define me, or my job defines me. But at the end of the day, like, you have to find that validation within yourself. And if your school, like, if you don't get in the school you want, or if you don't get the job you want, or if you're not doing well at your job and you want to move careers, like, that can't be your sole source of like validation in who you are. So you have to definitely build a sense of self outside of those things. So like, for me, sometimes that's reading books and like finding, personally, I'm passionate about D&I work. So like, I read a lot about that, and that makes me feel super fulfilled outside of anything having to do with my job or my life.
For sure. Yeah, so another thing that I wanted to talk about is what steps we can take to bring awareness to mental health, like letting a friend know that we're there for them, or talking to, anyone. What would you recommend students can do? And I feel like also, especially for students, it's kind of scary, or for young people to go to therapy, like you don't really want to do that. And it's not always accessible to everyone. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think there's actually a lot of like free mental health resources. So I would have to look up the names, but I know there's a lot of group counseling that is free that I highly recommend. I think it can be helpful to be in a group of like people that are kind of your peers and talk about what you're experiencing. I also definitely think like you have to reach out to people for them to know what's happening. Sometimes I am someone that keeps everything inside and don't really go to other people because I don't want to feel like a burden. And I think it's really important to like to always talk to people in your circle, like talk to your best friend about what's going on. And know that like whatever you're experiencing, someone else has definitely experienced it. Like, if you're not feeling worthy, like, other people don't feel worthy all the time.
Not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone. You're never alone.
And I think it's the most comforting feeling sometimes, is knowing that you're not alone. And also, if I would say, like, if you ever feel like you're a burden on someone, then maybe that's not maybe a good person to have in your life,
Yeah, because relationships should be two-way streets, right? Like, you should be able to share, like, I think Brene Brown says this a lot, but it's like, you should be able to share your shame stories with people, and they should be able to share theirs with you, and it should be like an even exchange. And if it's not, if you're in relationships that aren't like that, then maybe they're not the best relationships for you to be in.
For sure.
I'm definitely not perfect at all of these things, but one thing that I've always done is valued my sleep. So even during college, like post-college, I always will try to prioritize the things that are highest priority, and then everything else kind of falls to the wayside. And I try to put my sleep first, because I think when you're not well rested, it's a really big deal. It also, they've done a ton of research on like how it impacts the brain when you don't sleep. And even just like the hours you sleep have a impact. So I personally always prioritize sleep, and that helps me. I also think too, taking breaks is a really big deal. Like, I'm guilty of this, especially during COVID. Like, my job is super demanding. There have been times where I forget to eat, or I don't go outside. So I've been trying to be much more mindful of like, okay, I just completed X, Y, and Z. I'm going to go take a 30-minute break, and I'm like going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go eat lunch, and like I just try to be very mindful about those things, because at the end of the day, if you're not feeling good, you're not going to do your best work, right? Like, you can pump out like 15 college applications, but if you're not feeling good mentally, physically, etc., they're not going to be very good applications, right? So you just got to make sure that you are prioritizing yourself, even though things feel very chaotic.
Yeah. And I think a lot of students, they just have so much going on in their day, or they have a sport, or they have too much homework, and it ends up like, you end up going to sleep at 3 a.m. I know kids who go to sleep at 3 a.m. every day, and then the next day they wake up, they have to push through school, and then they go home, and then they have to sleep.
Yeah.
So I think definitely sleep is an important thing, and probably time management as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it does get tricky. Like when I was in high school, I was a dancer, so I was dancing like 5 days a week, and it's a lot to balance.
Mhm.
So I think it's important to also remember, like, if you're at capacity, it's okay to try to like turn things down, right? Like, I know that's hard, and we're always striving for perfection, and everybody wants to have the perfect application, but like, if you need to take a break from your sport, maybe that's something you should do. Or if you need to like dial back, pull back on certain activities, like, I think that's important. Because at the end of the day, like, you want to make sure you're feeling good and you're feeling happy, and you'll get into a college. Like at the end of the day, everybody's going to get in
We're all
somewhere.
gonna go somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and your path is going to work out for you. It's just, you just don't want to overwork yourself too hard.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice getting to get a professional insight on these topics. I'm going to link down below the free therapy that you told me about. So that'll be linked down below if anyone wants to check it out. And thank you so much, Nisi, from the West Coast. You was joining me today. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.